After a PhD in epidemiology, Erin Gainer joined a pharma startup in Paris. She later studied for an EMBA and became CEO of the company. Welcome to Alumni Experience, Erin. HRA Pharma now operates across Europe, but you joined when it was much smaller. How did that come about?
I met the founder in a little office in the 20th arrondissement in Paris. It was an old printing shop that was, just clearly a startup. I mean, the equivalent to a startup, as much of a startup as you could find, I would say, in that area. So at the time, the founder had just begun working with the business. There was one other employee, and had this very strong commitment to developing innovative products and focused on women's healthcare. And I didn't have any experience per se in the pharmaceutical industry, but I would say the values and the goals of the company just really resonated with me. And so decided to join the adventure and start working with the company. And I would say I spent 15 years with one company, but the company changed so much over that time period that it's as if I had worked in 10 different businesses.
They already had an initial product they wanted to bring to market. What was your role?
My first role was, my job title was a project leader, international project leader, and it was basically a role in drug development. We had licensed the rights to a new compound, a new molecule that was coming out of the States. And as a project leader, you have to manage all of the various experts and operational studies that go into developing a drug. Now, of course, I had no background in this per se. And in the matter of the first few months that I was in the business, I was already having meetings with the US FDA to talk about how you get the drug through regulators. I was meeting with chemists and pharmaceutical scientists to try and figure out how this molecule could be synthesized. I was meeting with contract labs to put up protocols for animal studies for safety. And so sort of, it was learning on the job, but all very exciting in a very short time frame, really getting very much involved hands-on in the development of a drug.
How did you go from there to running the company?
It's a bit of a mystery how I ended up running the company, it's true, when I think back. Between the years of 2000 and 2007 when I joined the business, so I worked on drug development, I developed new products, I got involved in the business side of things as our products got close to market, was involved in striking deals with licensees and distributors, and, getting more interested, I would say, on the business side, and I suppose showing some kind of skills in that area. Because the way things transpired, I remember very well, I was on a business trip in Montreal with the founder of the company, and we had dinner. It was January, it was very cold. Dinner one evening, and he started to tell me that he was thinking about taking a step back, that he's very much an entrepreneur, and the company was reaching a certain size where you needed a bit more to think about management. It was more about growing a business and less about founding it. And so he wanted to lay the basis for a succession plan, and he asked me at that point if I was interested in becoming the next CEO. So I was, of course, floored, but it's the kind of opportunity I think it's difficult to refuse. And we started talking at that time about preparing me actually for the challenges of taking over a CEO role. And my INSEAD Executive MBA came after that. So I already knew when I did my MBA that I was going to become CEO, and I was in a transition into that role. So it was really, I would say, a tailor-made educational program, if you like, going from scientist and drug developer through 14 months at INSEAD, and then coming out of that and taking over as CEO of a pharmaceutical company.
So you were CEO for 7 years during various rounds of investment, and then the company was sold. What was that process like?
So I was CEO for 7 years of the business, and we went through 3 separate processes during those 7 years of either raising capital, thinking about selling the business, thinking about taking it public, and then ultimately selling it. So I would say, I think of it, I had my day job, which was running the business and growing it. And then, every second year, I would spend 6 months at nights and weekends also going through a fundraising process. It was incredibly educational. I think with each new investor that you meet or that that challenges you about the business, it improves your own understanding of your strengths and your weaknesses. So I think, we did bring in private equity funding in 2011 as growth capital. So these were investors that, took a minority stake in the business and stayed with it for 5 years. And they, brought not just capital, but I would say a certain discipline to running the company that I found very beneficial. As we're growing the business, you have to put some of these processes into place. And so having an investor on board, I think, was quite positive to that extent.
Is there a tension in the pharma industry between helping people and making money?
When I was running HRA, for much of the time, we were largely privately held. Even when we brought in investors, I think there was always the ability to align our business goals with goals of improving health and meeting unmet medical needs. And I do think the pharma industry gives people the opportunity to align values with what they're doing. It's an industry with a horrible reputation. I know, people accuse the pharmaceutical industry of all sorts of horrible things, but I would guess that 90% of people who work in pharma do so because they believe that the work they do every day is improving people's lives.
What happens to those values when a company gets sold?
In my experience, as ownership transitions from private or family-held businesses to purely financial backing, it becomes more challenging to be persuasive that values matter. I think as companies grow, there's a sort of a repository of values that lies with the people in the business and the teams. And that's what keeps them there through changes in ownership, through changes in leadership. And that ultimately you can write what you want, on the company's website or behind the reception when you walk in. But it's when you ask people in the hallways, at the coffee break area, you ask them what are the values and why they come to work every day. I think that's the best way of preserving values.
You're now chairman rather than CEO, and you've endowed a charitable foundation. Why did you want to do that?
I just really feel like there's still a lot of room in the world for leveraging business skills and capital to make people's lives better. And I thought, why not take advantage of the fact I had exited successfully a position. I felt that I have skills to contribute, and it's really seemed like the time in my life to go ahead and set something up and be formal about it, not just sort of make donations right and left to various things, but say maybe we in setting up this venture philanthropy fund could bring something unique and really help to identify promising social entrepreneurs or projects around the world that we could just help move forward a little bit, even if it's just making a little bit of progress. I felt like it was very very meaningful to me, and also a really positive way, an exciting way for me to spend my time these days.